I'd like to welcome Arjun to the podcast. Arjun, it's great to have you here. And for those that don't know, Arjun is the CEO at Cloaked. Cloaked are a people first, all in one privacy solution. Welcome to Cyberbytes, Arjun. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks a lot for having me. I'm super excited to talk about privacy, security, everything under the sun. And I'm pretty proud of the stuff we're doing at Cloaked. It's been pretty strong passion of mine to figure out how we take on this problem of privacy.
Yeah, looking forward to the conversation, dude. Whereabouts are you in the world right now?
Right now in New York, good question. I tend to kind of be all over for work, but right now we're in New York. We have one of our HQs in New York, and so
Oh, awesome.
um, here today.
Good. So, yeah, I was actually there a few weeks ago visiting some clients, which was good fun, but luckily avoided the snow. So I hope that's gone
Oh
now.
yeah. Snow is gone. It's actually not fully aware in Celsius, but it's getting pretty hotter, feeling like more summery shorts weather for me. Getting the 60s, 70s Fahrenheit.
Love it. Cool. Well, jumping in, the first question I like to start with is, can you tell the audience who you are and the problem that you solve at Cloaked?
Yeah, so my name's Arjun. I'm the CEO of Cloaked. What we're trying to do at Cloaked is we're a consumer first privacy company, trying to figure out how to put people in control of their data and their identity. And a little bit about me. So I started this company with my current co-founder, who is actually my brother. So the joke is from Legos to startups, we've been working our whole lives together. Both technical, both engineering. And a bit about me, I've been in engineering for about almost 17 years, worn every hat from engineer to CTO, and also been a CPO, COO, always been in product engineering operations, and then actually been in startups. This is my third company. I managed to sell my first one, had the whole cool experience of starting, scaling, getting acquired. I went to my next one, which ultimately failed, so learned a lot from those lessons. Took a break, was a VC for a while, so I actually got the chance to invest in early stage companies. And then I actually got the big aha for Cloaked and then jumped into Cloaked. But that's kind of a bit about us, but we're
Right.
really consumer led in how we think about privacy and really making sure that it's about really the problem of data ownership, data control, and how do you create that for individuals.
Yeah, great. And we'll cover more about Cloaked later on in the podcast, but I'm
Sure.
keen to dive into your background because you don't have the, I wouldn't say a conventional background. What we've discussed before coming on is you started working at like 10, right? What's the story
Yeah.
behind this?
Yeah. So I'm a lot of people don't know this, but when I say I've been working for 17 years, it's that I'm actually 27. So I actually got my first job when I was 10 years old, as an engineer. And then I kind of quickly became a senior engineer at 11, team lead by 14. I've been constantly growing from an engineering perspective, but I put the time in to kind of grow across the board. But the kind of fun story around how it happened was that when I was 10, I started kind of did two things. One, I got a part-time job at a company to fix computers for 25 bucks a computer. That led to a whole endeavor, built my career where I eventually overheard the company talking about a challenge they had. And I jumped in one day. I was like, hey, I can build that for you. I had no idea. But I kind of took the idea and actually managed to rebuild it. Well, actually build it myself, and it led to a more than a $2 million contract for that company.
Wow.
So like I started rapidly grew. And the other thing was I started my own web development agency. And I still remember the funniest thing was I was 10 years old and I was cold calling businesses saying, why do you need a website? And there's one, I still remember this so strongly. I was in a rocking chair and I was talking to a woman who's talking about her business and website needs. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. My 3-year-old's running around. And I still remember I was drinking my Capri Sun and like my juice pouch. And I was telling her, oh yeah, my 2-year-old runs around all the time as well. And like I still remember that. And then I was doing cold calling, making websites because it's exciting for me.
Yeah, wow. That's fascinating. How did you get to that at 10? Like most 10-year-olds are just not in that position, right? They're just, I don't know, maybe they're into computers, but they just don't get to that advanced state at 10. That's pretty crazy. Like what was behind that in terms of upgrading? How did that all happen so quickly?
Yeah, I think at a young age, like earlier than 10, I was always interested in computers. I remember when I was 4, like I started to use an old HP computer. We had one in our house, playing some video games, and then get into more video games as I got a little older. My parents, I remember putting on parental blocks on the computers when I was getting like 8, 9, but I quickly figured out how to get around it. My father even put a like physical workaround. I kind of got around that too. So like I remember being, I could feel pretty comfortable around computers, but I remember distinctly at 10, I actually I didn't know a lot about programming or building websites, things like that. So what happened was I was at a sleepover, and I remember going to my friend's sleepover, and then he came up, like we went to his room, and he's like, "Guys, look what I did," and he showed us he made a website, and we were all blown away, like, "What? How did you build a website?" I didn't know at the time that he used is a company called Freewebs, which I think has evolved all the way today, but it was a drag and drop builder. I thought he coded it. So then I remember I went home after sleepover and I spent 4 hours reading about HTML. I got a little notebook, wrote little things, and I made my first website within 4 hours and put it online. And then I kind of got the bug and the passion. Was like, well, I can create something out of nothing. Didn't
Mm,
need a lot. I could use my basic home computer, and I was coding in Notepad at the time, and then slowly got better. But I was like, oh, I didn't need anything. And I think the idea of not needing resources to create something of value
mm.
was fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then if we like fast track the journey, so you had the first successful startup that sold, which is great. Then you had the second, which was a failure. I'm curious to dive in here because there's probably a ton of learnings that have helped you with Cloaked already, and other people might be interested in to hear some of your learnings and that you can share. Is there something that stands out to you that's like, damn, I need to do this differently next time? Or was there that one thing that was clear and obvious, or maybe a couple of things that you could share with the audience?
Yeah, I think the the first one, there's a lot of lessons we learned there too. I think the second one, the takeaway, and a lot of companies talk about this, your team is very important. I think I picked some co-founders that were just not in it for what we're trying to do. I learned from the kind of the whole process that it's grueling.
Mhm.
And part of the startup journey is that you're making a long-term commitment. This is not a school project type of mentality or a small time thing. Like it's not a club where you kind of come in casually. You have to be all in, and
Yeah.
you have to be a little crazy to try to do so. And that's why when I give advice to founders too, is that do you really connect and relate to the problem? Because you have to be bought in.
Mhm.
And it also came true is that a lot of companies fail, like not even due to market or to the product or the problem they're trying to solve. It's just the team and the co-founders that start the company.
Yeah.
And so I learned that lesson firsthand.
Mm.
I think there's around the team, and that's what led to Cloaked. My only co-founder is my brother, and he's who we started the first company. The one that we sold was
Oh,
he and
cool.
I too. So I was like, I want to make sure there's deep trust in the work I'm doing because we're trying to build trust for individuals. So the
Mm.
company's core should actually have the same principles of we have deep trust in one another and the way we operate. And then I also was very cautious of things around how do we think about who we're hiring,
Sure.
commitment around this, energy around the vision, the passion we're trying to do. And then I also learned about things around finances and these things around solve those problems early as opposed to trying to go ahead and organize that as you're running. That's like I brought on somebody to help me organize finances very early on, and
Yeah.
that and with Cloaked, and I think that has we've paid a lot of dividends from that as a company today.
Yeah, that's interesting. Two great shares there. And the other thing I wanted to cover as well is your trip to the VC world. I'm very curious. How did that transition? I know there's kind of methodical reasoning behind why you wanted to do that, right? But how did that transition go to the VC space from a guy that's an entrepreneur and having a successful and failed startup? What was the transition like? Was it fairly easy to get into?
Well, I think getting into VC was definitely eye-opening for me around like the whole business of VC too. I didn't realize how the industry worked. I knew from the entrepreneur side, trying to pitch, raise money, but I didn't know how the other side worked. I learned a lot of the mechanics. I think I had a rare opportunity when I was looking for a new job. I knew I didn't want to be an entrepreneur at that moment. I wanted to break from running a company, starting a
Yeah.
company, and I had a rare opportunity to join and start a VC fund. So I was coming at the ground up, trying to figure it out and build it. So that was fun for me is the entrepreneurial spirit of like trying to create something from new, but
Mhm.
it's also like in a field that's also new, but also in some way that is a job. So I have to take on the job as opposed to being the CEO trying to run the company. But
Yeah.
from the VC, I learned a lot of things around it depends on what stage you invest in, what your risk appetite needs to look like. I think from how you assess founders and companies, like one thing that I learned from that experience, what you brought into Cloaked, is that the person matters a lot. I think for investing in the business, especially in the earlier stages, when you get into late stage companies like Series C or Series D, it may not matter
Right.
as much. Where you want to have a core, a good team, but when you're in the early stages, a little tiny company that's just starting all of it as Series B, like it's all based on the founder themselves.
Sure.
And so how do you tell that story? And I think that's
Mhm.
one thing that I learned from VC. Like I saw a lot of bad examples to help me understand how I should do it right. Was that you're betting on the person and just their ability to help you understand the journey they want to go on.
Yeah.
They want to see, can they tell that story to you? Do they tell a similar story to their future employees or employees? Do they tell the same story to customers?
Yeah.
If you're not a good person who can tell that good a story, you're gonna have a hard time trying to build your business out. And so I
Mhm.
learned that. I also learned about markets to look at, how you write checks, and I also had good experience where I was trying to get my own partners in the venture to take a leap. We were VCs, like we gotta take some bets.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of getting that whole betting aspect, but it was pretty. It's natural coming to as an entrepreneur, kind of
Yeah.
getting into the VC. I think it's a pretty analogous space. The thing that's challenging is learning the mechanics of being a VC. Like
Mhm.
because technically you're trying to maximize returns with minimizing efforts. And a lot of times people think about VC as, oh, I'm going to put a lot of energy and effort to help the
Mhm.
company. But really, if you look at the math, the point is to kind of minimize the effort and maximize return. But I wanted to help the startups, and that's what's really big for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. What was your like ticket size then? Was it just early stage companies with?
Yeah, we were pre-seed. We were trying to write 50 to 200K checks.
Oh, nice.
So it's early, very early stage. And that's one of the things I wanted to work with my business partners was like, look, we're taking bets. We got to realize like they may not have much at all.
Yeah.
Like let's get the habit of like, do we really like this person? Do they have a good head on their
Mm.
shoulders? And do we like the direction they're headed for their market? Then
Yeah.
let's take a bet on them.
Yeah. Like you say, at that early stage when there's so little infrastructure behind them, the person's everything, right? And the story that they
Oh
can.
yeah.
That's interesting. Did you actually write a few checks then? Did you manage to close some deals?
Yeah, yeah, made
Oh, cool.
made some investments. That's
Oh,
cool.
cool.
I'm no longer active in the fund, so I definitely have to kind of follow up and see how things are going. But we definitely made some investments. I was excited to
Cool.
kind of see the whole process.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Um, the story behind Cloaked, you have to tell us the story behind this because I know we've
Yeah.
discussed it and it is quite funny in my opinion. But yeah, are you able to share the story behind how it happened?
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned about the starting story for Cloaked. Because Cloaked we are today isn't match how we began, but I think the idea is the vision is to actually come back to how it started. So the company began because back in 2020, I was really curious about my own data and what could my data do for me. So
Mhm.
what I actually ended up doing was I bought a Mac Mini, put it in my apartment, and decided to write integrations into everything I could find about my data. Because I was curious and I knew that when I'm happy, sad, or my day's going well, not going well, it's all related to the data that's flowing through my life. I knew there's some understanding. I was like,
Yeah.
well, how could I build that understanding? So I tried to get everything I could find, my data footprint in a box. And I did. I wrote these integrations, these little listeners that pull data. And then I wrote some crude ML models to study my data and give me some insights. And so it started telling me things. It said, hey, after a little while looking at different data, I was like, hey, look at my different things and give me some insights and actions. So it told me, hey, you missed your workout yesterday. Do 15 push-ups between these two meetings. Based on my spending habits, it said, hey, let's cut back on the alcohol and Chinese food this week. But it hit me in the face one day when I was at lunch with somebody. I put my phone down. End of lunch, I picked up my phone and I realized my really crude AI had a full conversation with my then girlfriend. It told her I love you. It sent her memes. It went back and forth with her in conversation. And by the time I picked up my phone, it was over. And it was crazy. I was just staring at it. And I was like, and how is the data is coming out is that I had connected basic stuff like my Google Calendar, my Facebook data. I hacked
Mhm.
iMessage, my banking data, workout data, eating data, healthcare data, GPS data, everything I could find, I'd put in this box. So it was a interesting moment to see that all culminated in that one interaction. But then two things hit me in that moment. I realized one, I don't own any of my own data, even though it all relates to
Right.
me.
Yeah.
And two, I love technology, but I would never trust Facebook, Amazon, Google to make something like this. And this is all pre-OpenAI, ChatGPT, and this where I was like, okay, somebody has to solve the privacy problem.
Mm,
And that's what got me in that journey. It's like, how do we crack this?
yeah, it's fascinating. And I'm keen to cover the privacy problem in more detail
Yeah.
because I've watched some videos about how your platform operates and it's very interesting. But yeah, give the listeners an insight to how it actually works then. What's the functionality behind Cloaked and um what's it how can they use it? What's it doing for them?
Yeah. So to address your question immediately, I'll answer that and I'll step back into how we got to it.
Cool.
So right now, what we do is we create real world identities on the fly. An identity can be a unique email, phone number, credit card, username, password, whatever for Amazon. Unique email, phone number, password for Uber,
Yeah.
phone number for a cute guy at the bar, email for a realtor you're talking to. We don't make throwaway or burner, but it's real working piece of data tied to that relationship. Because what we realize is that the main problem at the end of the day is that every company knows everything about you. It's
Right.
kind of wild that the IRS, our government agency here in the States, and Domino's has the same data about me. Like these both don't need to know everything. So how do we actually differentiate the different relationships we have in technology? And so
Mm,
it starts with creating cloaks, or what we call them cloaks or identities for every step of the way.
right.
And we've built it to work like a password manager, but instead of just saving everything, we create as you go as well. So
Mm,
this common internal effort makes it easy for someone to keep the existing behavior of saving your stuff, but now adding this on top of that. So starts the privacy journey. We have a
right.
lot more we're headed towards, but we managed to start there. But the whole reason we started there was that we realized we have to unpack the word privacy. And so I broke it up into actually three distinct layers. The outermost layer I defined as security, encryption, fraud, fingerprinting. What is that vector of attack? The second layer I redefined as privacy. Where does my data live? Who has access to it? What does it look like? But the other layer that actually the core layer part of this is something everyone has to really think about is layer we call comfort. And it's that cognitive point which everybody understands the problem. Their
Mm,
VP of engineering or my own mother. And it's just that moment when I ask you for your name, email, phone number, credit card, address, everybody gets it. So that's why we started there, because at that point we can people feel the problem, they understand the problem, and then we can build and expand from that point on.
yeah, it's interesting. And the data that you're utilizing, is this real data or is it just made up data that you can use? Like the phone numbers and the emails, how are you accessing, like, is that actual data?
Yeah,
Like,
so we knew that at the end of the day to make this consistent is that we have to fit within existing user behavior.
right.
So we don't say it out loud that much, but we're quietly a telecom company. We buy, manage, route all the calls, texts ourselves. We work with a partner carrier to make this possible. We are a full email service company, and then coming later this year, we're a full credit card issuing company. That we actually go ahead and issue, manage, and do all the transactions for credit cards and route it to someone's actual credit card or debit card or bank account behind the scenes.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And then the tech behind that, then there must be some pretty impressive tech to be able to generate that. I don't know how deep you want to go into, but it'd be good to understand how that all happens.
Yeah, so at the core level, we wanted to first solve the problem of the data breach problem.
Yeah,
People have heard of LastPass and some of these companies
yeah,
that all 34 million records are compromised. So we first took that problem at its core. When you make your account on Cloaked, like if anybody here signs up for an account on Cloaked, we actually spin up a brand new database for every single user. So you
okay,
first create logical
yeah,
separation so that if we're compromised, it doesn't mean you're compromised. If you
right,
compromise us, then every user individually.
smart,
Secondarily, so is that it's also zero knowledge encrypted. So
yeah,
you have the keys. So the data is itself encrypted and it's also separated.
okay,
So that was the first code I wrote. So I want to make sure that that problem is taken care of intelligently. Then the next part we got into is like, okay, how do we build the email and phone and all this? So what we did was we worked with the carriers to get the number. Then we wrote what's called routing. The routing manages how these numbers are generated, where the calls go,
mm,
all so that a user doesn't have to also just use our app. People in our space, like they often do just raw forwarding, or they just make you forced you to use their app. You can use native iMessage or native call. You can go ahead and keep using Gmail, and Cloak can sit on top of that. And that's what's really exciting for us, is that dynamic. And the way we accomplish it, it's complex in nature. We've done really cool things where we can generate a unique number for every website. That's really cool. But we do some really cool things to make that possible, which is based on the fact that each number is related to each website or each person. So if I give you a number today, you can call and text me. But the thing is that this is where it gets complicated. We try to make this even harder to track for people. Let's say some other person, John, wants to talk to Sally. Those two people might actually get the same number that you and I have. So we overlay people on the same number, which introduces data poisoning. Because right now, with third-party cookies and trackers going away, everyone's forcing and joining data based on emails and phone numbers. So we want to tackle that at its core. So you break that data join system.
Yeah. And let's talk about privacy, because I know the mission behind Cloaked, right? You're very passionate about this. I know we've had a couple of chats around how you don't think it's kind of been missold. It's not positioned correctly right now. Like, what's your thoughts around privacy, and what does that actually mean to you?
So privacy, I think, because of big tech, is an overloaded word by design. You shoved everything under the word privacy, and security also falls into it sometimes, and it becomes like there's completely different things. I think security comes into how you protect the box around you where all information is, and privacy kind of comes into what's in the box. And what I realized when you unpack the word privacy, the real way of looking at it is how do you introduce control for people, where they have some exertion of control over the information they're putting out there.
Right.
And it's the easiest way for me to look at it is that today, you and I are talking, but I don't talk about when I was 7 years old. I used to be so terrified of dogs. I actually jumped into a lake to dodge a dog. Like I was like so scared, but that doesn't come up in a normal conversation. Maybe after meeting each one of the times, you get a drink, I might share some fun stories. But the challenge is that in technology, when you're browsing online, you're talking to people, it's like 50 people are behind you watching you and everything you do. But that's not how normal behavior works.
Sure.
So how do we introduce control so that not everybody knows everything about you, but you can choose what's being shared? And that's the control we want to create. And when you do that correctly, it first of all creates comfort. People feel more comfortable trying new apps, talking to new people. Not, or if there's somebody's a potential stalker, you can just shut that number off. You're trying to buy a new house and everyone's bombarding you. You also can say, let's calm down here. Or companies don't need to know everything when they're targeting and advertising things to you. You can choose how that's working.
Right.
It creates comfort, and then ultimately it builds trust with businesses and people coming together, and it creates safety. That issues of your family, your personal life, how that's compromised. That's where privacy comes in. It's about control, it's about trust, it's about safety to create a sense of comfort.
Yeah, makes sense. The control element is missing, isn't it? Let's be real.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a clue if I was to look at who has my data. I dread to think it's probably scattered all over. How does it work? Because obviously I'm based in the UK, and UK have different laws against what the US would have. Are you just purely US focused now? Do you have plans to scale beyond that, or are you already there?
So we absolutely are trying to work on scaling launching outside the US. We're right now just US.
Cool.
But it doesn't stop people from coming in to signing up and using emails and passwords, etc. The big thing for us is we found is that we want to do the phone thing right in other countries, and same with credit cards.
Yeah.
Now the credit cards actually we can do it a bit faster. Phone requires a bit of a steps, but we found a nice cool shortcut to kind of expand phone numbers across the globe. So we're working through that.
Okay.
But that's absolutely possible across outside the US. We're just starting here, just a starting point for us.
Yeah. And what do you see happening in the privacy space over the next couple of years? Because you've been focused the last few years now on this space.
Yeah.
And you've built a very interesting product. Yeah. How do you see things progressing over the next couple of years?
So I think there's going to be a growing demand to figure out privacy. If you look at OpenAI and all the AI work that's happening, everyone's seeing the rapid growth of AI. But what has to grow alongside it that the astute person can point out is privacy.
Right.
Because you can see there's fear, there's unease, there's a lack of when this comes closer and closer to our life, and AI mimicking people's doing AI voice cloning, the deep fakes to AI knowing things about you when they're targeting and focusing. there's unease, and so somebody has to crack this problem. And I think it comes down to, what does data decentralized mean? And I
Yeah,
think data decentralization doesn't necessarily mean blockchain. We always jump to blockchain. I think blockchain is a great tool, but I think it's really data centralization in the hands of a person.
yeah,
Whoever cracks that right and makes someone make it easy, simple, and part of their life, not a big technical thing, that will be the biggest unlock for privacy. But I see there's a lot of privacy companies taking swings at uh, how do we actually make sure that we hold companies accountable,
right,
data deletion. There's good efforts across the board, but right now a lot of the dollars go towards security and compliance, which I
right.
think is great. But I think the problem is that breaches only go up. Like, the things are only going up. So all the dollars are pouring into compliance, security, aren't amounting to the reduction in breaches we'd like. And I think the main
Mhm.
problem is that every single company shouldn't know everything about you. And
Right.
that's the future we're going to head to. And I think the privacy company that accomplishes that intelligently, they're the ones going to win. And I think they're going to change how the whole world works. We hope it's us.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because that's essentially the cause of everything spiking, right? So if that can be contained or controlled, then maybe you'd see a reduction in that.
Yeah.
So as you say, if someone gets it right, that's going to be very interesting. Well, we are running out of time. It's been an absolute pleasure, Arjun, to have you on. If folks watching this, listening to this, they want to get in touch with you or the business or want to know more about the platform, how should they reach you guys?
Yeah, so I was gonna just put my phone away, so I'll do it quickly. But one can always reach us. You can visit us on cloak.com or
Mhm.
visit us on Cloak in the App Store. But for the people listening to this audience, I'm using our mobile app, and I'm just gonna make a number on the fly. You can text me directly. I made a number. It's +1, but +1 501 283 7315. You can text me directly. That'll
Oh,
reach
wow.
me, and it's a number unique to this audience. Like, that's the way of thinking
That's
about this, that we've always been focused on. How can your life get better if you actually have Cloaked? It's not about hiding, it's not about being anonymous, it's about being in control.
Great finishing point. Well, Arjun, yeah, thanks, dude. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. And we'll chat again soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.